And welcome to the first ARGWEB training video. Now today is a bit of a test, and what we're going to try to do is look at a concept called spotlight surveys. So I'll talk a bit through what they are and then how to set them up in ARGWEB. So what's a spotlight survey? So imagine a situation in your ARG where one of your goals is you want to determine what the distribution of the reptile amphibian species are across your area. So across your county in most cases. Where are they? Which is a basic need before you can conserve them. So the issue is that no matter how well you survey, you're going to have black spots across your area. And what you might want to do is focus and get a better density of sightings and observations in those black spots. This is really useful if you're doing data searches, supporting planning applications, or defending against planning applications. So a real strength of the ARG are its resources. We've got the ARG membership itself, and if you don't have very many of those at the moment, as you grow you'll gather more and more about you. And we've also got ARG social media. Most ARGs have got more followers than members. There's more people interested in going on and what's going on in the world, so they'll be looking at you on Facebook and Twitter or Instagram. So we've got that resource group there. One of our weaknesses is how do we direct those people to where to look? We could put a post maybe on a Facebook page. It's not much of a process. There's no recording. When they go back, can they find the post again on Facebook? So we need some means of directing our resources to the task in hand. And that's what the idea of spotlight surveys are, really. So we want survey direction and to focus on a particular area within our area operations, and we might want to change that by time. We might want to focus for a little while, get a lot of sightings, and then the next year move it to a different area and fill some sightings up there. So getting on to a bit more of what a spotlight survey is, let's look at Hampshire as an example. We've got all sorts of sightings mapped across Hampshire, but as you can see there are some gaps. Over on the northwest, central regions, central north, and the very north, there's some big gaps in the sightings. Now, these look quite dense, but this is all species across the last 10 years. So actually, it's not a very dense laydown of sightings there at all, and there's some big glaring gaps in there. And what we'd like is to at least fill in some of those gaps so we get an idea of what species do occupy those areas. So let's look at the north area somewhat, and let's imagine that, say, we wanted to set up a spotlight survey that looked at a particular area, and let's just say for argument's sake it was a rectangle like that. So we're going to need some way of actually defining that rectangle, and we can do that quite simply by just a pair of grid reference coordinates. So up at the top left, or the northwest corner, if we've got a grid reference for that, and if we end up with a grid reference for the southeast corner as well, just those two grid references can be used to define that whole area, which should be easy. But how do we find the grid references? Well, Google Maps is good for that. So if we look to the northwest corner, if you open Google Maps and zoom in and find where you want your northwest corner for your rectangle, and you click on the map, sometimes you need to click on it twice, you'll get a little pop-up, and on that pop-up it will actually show you the grid reference. That's in decimal latitude and longitude, WGS84 format or thereabouts, but it gives you a grid reference for that exact location you've clicked on, which is great. So make a note of that. And then we want to move down to the southeast corner, and we can do exactly the same. Click on the map, it'll come up the little pop-up box, and we go to pair of coordinates for the southeast corner of the rectangle. So make a note of both of those pairs of grid references, and that's what we need. So then we move on to how do you set up a spotlight survey in ARGWEB, and how does it work? Okay, so now we're on to running ARGWEB live, and as we used Hampshire as an example, we use the Hampshire portal. And to set up a spotlight survey, you're going to need to be in committee tools. So you need admin privilege to get in there. And we want to look over Webmaster Tools, because it's about setting up the website itself, and then into ARGWEB settings. And you'll see in your ARGWEB settings, very near the top, you've got the Spotlight Survey area. You've got Northwest and Southeast. And into those boxes, I've typed in the 2 coordinates that we made a note of when we were setting up our rectangle. You can change these at any time, and these will define your Spotlight Survey area. And once you fill those in, you scroll down to the bottom of the page and you click Save Changes. Now, when you've got there, what you want to do is go right back to the top, so you can just click Members Area, and you've got Spotlight Survey Area icon appear. If you didn't have that before, it will suddenly just appear by magic. And when you click on that, it might take a little while to sort itself out, and you've got your area defined. And it says Spotlight Surveys are a means of gathering sighting records. We've been through that. The grids below are where there are sighting records. Now, what you can do on this, you can click this little icon here, and it maximizes the map for you. It gives you a Google Maps view. And as you zoom in, you can see the areas where we have got sightings. Now, it doesn't say what those sightings are, and that's really to protect vulnerable species. Not everybody who joins your ARG is necessarily been vetted by you and cleared, so having European protected species or maybe adders locations available may not be a good thing. But the purpose of this is to show where we know animals are and where we don't know where any animals are. So anywhere, as you can scan across this map, if I was a prospective surveyor looking to add to the records for my ARG, I'd see, oh, there's a nice bit of forest there, some nice southern edges. More here. Look at this lovely linear feature here. We've got a whole line of vegetation well linked in to other areas. All southeast facing edges there. That'll be a lovely area to have a look for reptiles. And also, I'm sure we could find that looks like a pond, doesn't it? Potentially. Certainly looks like a wet area within the field. Obviously, they would need to obtain permissions, but in most areas there's public access areas, so they can just go for a walk and have a look. So that defines the area you want people to look, and all they've got to do is if they're a member and they can log in, they can just click on this and it gives them a reminder of where you're looking for at the moment. And if you were to change that area, you could put a message out on Facebook or whatever, but someone might miss that message. But if they're logging into ARGWEB, immediately they can click on the Spotlight Survey and they can see where you're interested in, and you can change it as much as you like. Now, what it does is it sets up some arbitrary targets for you. It doesn't assume you want every hectare filled. That's beyond reasonable expectations. So for amphibians, it says, okay, so over the last 10 years in this whole area, which is 25,000 hectares, that's a pretty big area. You might want a smaller spot area than what we've actually looked at here. We've only got 10 amphibian sightings in that entire area over the last 10 years. So we want to do something about that. And as people report and record sightings for you, then these graphs will change. And you might decide that actually once you've got 100 or so sightings in that area, that'll be good enough for you. But it sets some academic targets for you. On the reptile side, it's even worse. There are no reptile records there at all, 0. So anything anyone can find would be fantastic. Now, this is a data fusion system, so it takes in data from multiple systems, but particularly Record Pool and particularly the ARGWEB built-in recording system. And what it will do is give you an indication of who the last people were who've submitted sightings in this area. So I don't know these particular people, but they've submitted sightings of amphibian species. And if you submit a sighting and look at the Spotlight Survey page, you can see your sightings popped up, and it will give you an idea of how well you're doing. So it might be you might get a new record, first species record in that monad, fantastic, but that implies that other species have been seen there. So we've got a common toad record on the 22nd of March, first species record in that monad, probably something like common frog had been seen there before. But down here, when the smooth newt was recorded, that was the very first record we'd ever got, or any amphibian or reptile species in that entire monad. And a monad is a 1 kilometre by 1 kilometre square. So this is a little bit of surveyor feedback They get a nice buzz, generally, surveyors, if you can see your name there and see that you've contributed. And the goal is to infuse your ARG membership to get new monad records. Those are the gold star moments. Yeah, you've got a new record in an area you had no idea there's anything there before. And that's the whole point of spotlight surveys, really. So this is their direction. It gives them an idea of where to look. They want to use their own initiative and a bit of training maybe, particularly with spotting reptiles. It can be tricky, but just basically trying to underline the value that anything in this area you can find at all, even if it's a common frog, let's get it on the record system because we just don't know anything's there. So if I go back up to the top as well, we've also got a nice handy app. They can report sightings there. So if they go out on, take the family for a walk, take the dog for a walk, and they see some frogs fall in a pond, they can just click on report animal sightings and they can record that. It'll pop up into the Spotlight Survey app. All those sightings will go into your local database and you will get a better idea of which animals are in your own backyard. And that's a win for everybody. And that's it for this video. I hope it made sense. If not, drop me an email and we'll try and do better next time. Cheers.